Evening at the Movies is a proud member of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network. Other shows in the network include Mass Debaters, The Sip List, Crushgasm, Love is Black, Men Are the Prize, Crime Rewind, and Literature Reapers. You can find out all about our shows and more at idnmtrpodcastnetwork.com. Happy listening. You are now entering the world of a movie review. A world full of drama, joy, ridicule, movie spoilers, unpopular opinions, and adult humor for as far as the eye can see. Welcome to An Evening at the Movies.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to your favorite movie review podcast. This is An Evening at the Movies. I am your incredible, awesome, amazing. There's all kinds of adjectives that describe me, but you know me best as Kasey. And as you all know, this is the podcast where we eat stale popcorn, we drink watered down sodas, and we discuss all of our favorite movies and why we love them. Tonight, we're going to be discussing, dare I say, a very classic movie. But before we can get into that, though, I have to introduce our first time guest that is making his debut on An Evening at the Movies tonight. We recently recorded an episode of The Sip List together with Amanda, but it was rather fitting that he comes over and makes a debut on An Evening at the Movies as well. We're excited to have him. We have, and out of respect, I'm not going to attempt the last name. I will let him go.
It's not that
his last name.
difficult. It rhymes with mintish and flintish. Anyway, my name is Benjamin Kintisch.
Okay, that works too. But you
But
can
the
introduce
rhymes,
yourself.
That's just because I'm a school teacher. Yes.
You
My
can.
name-
I will let you introduce yourself, and you can talk to the listeners about what it is that you do, what you've got going on. I remember the whole big long spiel from the other night when we did the SIP list, but I don't want to miss anything, so I'll let you have the floor, and you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, sir.
Well, thanks, Kasey. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your
Not a
show.
problem.
And I enjoyed the conversation we had last week. And when I discovered you had another show, I was thrilled to be a guest. So thanks again for having me.
Anytime.
Yeah, and so I'm making the rounds of the podcast universe as a theater maker. I'm a songwriter and a playwright. Again, my name is Ben Kintisch. And I created a new musical comedy called Life Review, the hospice musical. So Life Review is a funny and heartwarming and heartbreaking new play inspired by my own real life experiences as a beginner chaplain working in a hospice facility. At the time, I was in my, I want to say, early mid 30s, which is the approximate age of the character I now play on stage. Except maybe now he's in his mid 40s. he's aged along with me as it goes when you play yourself.
There is nothing wrong with being in your mid 40s.
No. And the key thing is to make older friends, so they keep telling me how young I am, right?
Exactly. Because I've got all the gray hairs to prove it, but at the same time, we are not old. I just turned 47 last week, and I feel 27 years old.
Well, that's fantastic. No, I definitely commend those people who can stay young even as they age. I try to do that through music. My day job these days, I'm a music teacher. I teach children in kindergarten through 4th grade. So there's a lot of singing and dancing, including scarves, do some puppetry, skits. The singing is kind of my bread and butter with the kids. But returning to the play, I created it when approximately it was about 10 years ago. I'm over 10 years into this project, so it might be 11 or 12 years at this point. Hard to keep track. But a while ago. And so when you're a beginning chaplain, you do this class called Clinical Pastoral Education, CPE,
Mhm.
and you do clinical rounds visiting patients in their rooms. Um, the two places I worked, they were both facilities that had several dozen beds, so you could go kind of room to room over a shift of several hours.
Mhm.
So that was how I did my hours. I visited people one by one. Sometimes I was visiting with the individuals receiving end of life care. Sometimes I was visiting with their loved ones. Uh, it may feel surprising to hear this, but a lot of chaplains who work in elder care and hospice care, they don't just minister to the person in the bed, so to speak. They also minister to the plus one, or the whole little ecosystem of family, the web of family around the person
Mhm.
who's dying. So my experience in real life included all of these different kinds of relationships, and I ended up putting a variety of relationships on stage when I created this play.
Mhm.
The most essential thing that happened was I would sit and do a structured interview conversation called a life review. So, life review, the name of the musical, the name of one of our
Mhm.
best songs. Um, it's a borrowed term, and it's a clinical term that describes a kind of an interview that's meant to evoke sort of a highlight reel of a person's life. That's a life review. So, I learned how to do this technique. And in doing it with patients, you kind of get these amazing stories. I met people who were as probably the most glamorous in my mind, a very famous labor leader whose name I can't reveal for HIPAA reasons, but he was famous.
True.
I met a guy who claimed to be formerly Mossad and CIA. I can't verify if that's true, but it sure had some cool. He sure had some
Okay.
cool stories. A woman who is married to a band leader in a big Portuguese dance band and traveled up and down the East Coast as his plus one. And like,
Mm.
and then I kind of remember a poignant story from a guy who was in like the siding business and worked hard to pay off his mortgage and got his daughter into community college and was like satisfied that he'd worked hard,
So you
made it.
kind of sort of get both ends of the spectrum. You get
The
the
entire
celebrity end, and
once
then
in a blue moon. Most people
the
are regular.
blue collar,
Yeah, blue
regular,
collar, white
average every
collar.
dude.
Yep, every day people die and fancy people die. In fact, the comedy number that I wrote that opens the musical, I'm going to be performing this Saturday night at a local cabaret night of comedy music. And part of the conceit of the song that's funny, spoiler alert, everybody dies in the end. Sorry to ruin the play, my friend. Love 'em or hate 'em, this cannot bend. Everybody dies in the end. And I go on and I list all the types of people, including the lowliest pauper, the loftiest king. We all gotta die. So that couplet came to mind because in real life, before I was writing any songs, I was just experiencing the entirety of humanity. They end up in the hospice, so to speak.
Mhm.
So that made an impression on me. And then the specificity of the songs and doing these the specific stories. They struck me. And one night, the famous story goes, I was calling my wife on the cell as I came home from my shift, and I said, "Honey, these stories, they want to be songs." And she said, "Get writing." So that night, I opened up one of these journal books. Um, I love the composition books, and I started scribbling the song that actually made it all the way to the show to this day, 10, 12 years later. Oh, do you also decorate your books? You buy them
I
pre-decorated.
have a football sticker on the front and
Nice.
a football sticker on the back.
I like it. Mine
But yeah,
mine are
I can
decoupage.
sympathize. Well, I also have decorations all over the back of, or the top of my laptop as well. I've got stickers from everybody in the network. I've got an evening at the
Nice.
movie sticker. I've
You're well
got.
decorated, Kasey. That's awesome.
I like to have a little bit of flair in my life. We can't
Hey, it's
always have
important.
flair every moment of every day, but
Little
hey,
razzle dazzle never hurt, for sure.
nope.
No, I was laughing. I know some of us are listening and some of us are watching. For those of you watching, I'll give you the extreme close-up. So that's one of my decoupage songwriting journals. This one actually may be a business journal, which is very old school of me. But when I take business meetings, I write notes in this. But
I have so many of those floating around the house; it's ridiculous.
yeah, I learned about decorating songwriting journals from my songwriting hero, Sue Horowitz, who's actually part of this story. I wrote several of these songs privately after being encouraged by my wife, but I never had the nerve to share them until the first time I did, right? And it was this wonderful songwriter. Any of you listening who like folk music, she's really great. Her name is Sue Horowitz. I'll write it in the box. Give her a shout out. She has a great new album. Anyway, she hosted a songwriting swap at a Jewish education conference I attended. I shared this early song, and the room full of people were in tears after 3 minutes. The song wasn't really done, so to speak, but clearly it was impactful. And this wonderful songwriter, Sue, who was hosting the workshop, she came up to me after and she said, "You've created something of great power. Congratulations." I said, "Thank you." And she said, "Is there any more material?" And I said, "There is." And she said, "I want you to keep working on it. And next summer, come back to the conference and I'm in charge of entertainment. I'll get you a spot in a late night." So the following year, I think I presented 2 or 3 songs late at night. And she liked it. And she said, "Next year you get a stage." So that was the first time I got a workshop. I'm skipping over one other key detail in the story. I'm the lyricist and the playwright. I've worked with several composers who have helped me. So shout out to Jason Spiewak, Michael Miller, additional music from Andy Vosov and Miriam Cook. So along the way, I found these composer friends. We co-wrote songs, and those songs have been put together along with my script to make a musical comedy. So there's a full-length play, and I'm looking for theatrical partners. So any of you guys out there who don't just love movies but are involved with theater, if you hear this and you're curious, check out the website lifereviewmusical.com and learn more. And you can also get in touch there. We also have a one-man version of the show. I perform from this space virtually, and I'm also able to travel around the world and perform it. I've done it live at a fringe festival in Asheville. I've performed at conferences, performed for trainings, synagogues, churches, cultural places. And because it's a one-man show, it's condensed, like cabaret style. So 8 songs I perform live in one whirlwind 45-minute show, followed by a brief Q&A with me, the presenter. So that's a project I'm excited to share with the world. If you're listening and involved with any of the kinds of organizations I mentioned, I'd love to hear from you. Oh, other thing I should mention, with that one-man show, I've done some very successful fundraisers. So if you're involved with a nonprofit or any kind of group that does a fundraiser and you're curious about the show, let's talk about putting it on and making some money for your good cause while I get to share this interesting project. So that's my big pitch, Kasey. Oh, I should also mention I'm active on Instagram at Life Review Musical. And again, the website lifereviewmusical.com. And I'll type those all into the box so Kasey, you can share those out.
Yeah, because we will make sure too that in the show notes, I'll provide all the information for everything that Ben just talked about, as well as I'll also provide links on all of our social media as well, so that if you are interested in looking into or anything else remotely involved with Ben and his projects, then you can get in touch and everything that you need to do so that you can further the relationship. So
I appreciate that, Kasey. Hey, I thought of one last thing. I've only started
okay.
doing this recently, and I feel like it's sort of a, what do you call it? Like a message in a bottle, because you never know who's going to hear. So
No.
I mentioned in my story this woman, Sue Horowitz, who was a quote, real accomplished songwriter, and she is. She heard my stuff early on and was kind and encouraging, and it made all the difference in making me want to continue with my project. So if you're listening today and you have a project, especially something that's musical theater, but even like songwriting in general, and it's in a drawer, so to speak, or a folder on your phone, and you've not yet shared it, my soapbox thing is I encourage you to share it. Yes, Kasey's holding up one of those journal books. So if you've got stuff in journal books, good for you for writing it down and getting started. I encourage you to share it more widely. Make it your New Year's resolution. It's not too late. It's only February to share, share, share. There's a great book called Show Your Work, which I love. But there's the online stuff, of course. But if you're lonely for real life people, if you're a songwriter or a poet or whatever, go to like your local coffee house, your open mic night. You'll find the cool people and the creative people in your community you never knew were out there. I happen to have this random access to a Jewish education conference that provide me with several years worth of stages. That was kind of my random community at the time. It's not really theatrical, but it gave me a chance to stand it up in a certain way. But anyone who's listening and if you have a dream that's small and it's mostly private, my biggest advice for you is share it with people and find others who are interested, who can join in the fun. Because that's been so huge for me. If you check out the website, it's kind of crazy how big the creative team is. Like we haven't even done a commercial production yet, and we have like 8 or 9 people listed because it takes a lot of people to put something together.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Absolutely.
As cliche as it may sound, but
yeah,
and 100% that is one of my goals for this year is the fact that because I love writing and I found these handy dandy hardcover journal books at the local corporate conglomerate juggernaut Walmart, and I bought a handful of them because each one of those books has like 330 something pages in it. So it's like I can hand write out everything that I want for my stories and all that, and I have my own handy dandy little hardcover book that has the stories in it. So,
yeah, I
but
like
at the
it.
same time, I still want to muster up the courage to share my stuff and try and get stuff published. So I'm going to be as much
Excuse me.
as oh, you're fine. I I love. I've talked about it a lot. I love an evening at the movies, and an evening at the movies will never ever go away. It'll be the um, crazy uncle that always shows up at the family wedding that makes a fool out of himself, but still sticks around. But um, I also want to make an attempt to try and get myself published and see, you know, if I can achieve that dream as well that I've had for the better part of the last 30 plus years. Wow.
Well, I believe you can do it, Kasey, because if you think about what you've created with this podcast,
Hmm.
um, if you were to theoretically take all of these conversations and write them down, that would make a pretty big book. Am I right?
Oh, easily.
Or many
Um,
volumes, many times over.
well, oh, probably hundreds of times over, just for the pure fact alone that um, last week, as we're recording this episode, we just did our 200th episode.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's been,
Congratulations. That's exciting.
thank you so much. But yeah, there's been lots and lots of people that have walked through the door on an endless, stream of guests. And we've talked about a whole lot. We've shared memories about movies, and that's actually not a bad idea for a book. Wow, I literally just talked myself into an idea.
Yeah. And
But
if you want to keep this conversation going off when the recording's done, Kasey, I've got some ideas about about the book for you, and I'm glad to share them with you. But I think in addition to the creative writing that apparently you've got in books, where maybe the step between the book and the publishing house is sharing it with some other people, I'd love to hear something or read something. Maybe your local place for
Absolutely.
you. Because you're pretty brave on the mic in terms of the podcast. Like you're clearly a natural,
For
at least at this point.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's definitely a lot better now than what it was 3 years
Sure.
ago.
You've developed the
3 years
muscle.
ago, there was literally every okay, so that was one of my favorite words in the beginning was like literally, literally was like my crutch word. But then also I was very big on the um uh because you don't have you're if you're not used to again right there trying to complete a coherent verbal thought, then when you have those dead spaces, you need to fill up the dead space with something, and the easiest thing to do is just uh, but then for the listeners, people don't realize that's not the most engaging and interesting way to keep a listener listening to you and enthralled. So
Indubitably.
definitely. So with all of that said, not that I haven't enjoyed the vast, discussion of our intro, but we are here for a purpose tonight.
Yeah, let's talk about a movie.
Um, so we are going to be discussing the Disney classic, as I said. Well, I didn't say Disney earlier, I don't think, but I said classic.
Yeah, you
Um,
teed it up, but you didn't give that many
Beauty and
clues.
the we're trying to keep a little bit of mystery involved, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Sometimes I, have the slip of the tongue and bit. It's all out there before we even get to the guest intro. So, but tonight we're here to discuss the song or the movie based around the song that Ben is humming.
Beauty and the Beast. And there it
The
is,
beast would be
folks.
me.
And I'm the
So
beauty. And this is where we say, is this a radio show?
it is a radio show, and why is
And yet I'm seeing your
oh
face. It's all good.
no, Amanda just sent me a picture from Antigua
Oh, what's up,
because she's
Amanda?
on vacation in the Caribbean right now. Lucky for her. While I'm stuck in the Pacific Northwest with snow on the ground. Not a lot of snow, mind you. It melted away during the day, but I digress. So,
Yeah, here in Maryland, the snow doesn't stay long.
no, I don't know about the East Coast as much, but I'm on the West Coast, literally on like 20 minutes off the coast,
Mm-hmm.
and because the Pacific tends to be a little bit warmer than the Atlantic, um, our marine air doesn't really allow for a whole lot of snow to accumulate
Right. A lot of rain,
in
right?
in our section. Yeah, it's a lot more rain than anything else. So people think that like our winters are like East Coast winters. Not really. It's a lot more raining and flooding than it is 6 inches, foot and a half of snow. So
All right.
at least we don't have, well, no, because that's not true. Because then when we do actually get snow, then we have people who don't know how to drive in it, and then we end up with car accident after car accident after car accident after car accident,
Mm.
and at the end of the day, that's just not that fun. But so, really quick before we get into the discussion,
Yes.
I do have some background information on the movie in case in the last 33 years, 32, almost a little over 32 since it came out. In case you haven't seen the movie, but I digress. There's an animated version and a real life version, and if you haven't at least seen one of the two of them, then shame on you.
Yeah. Where have
But
you been?
no, I feel like maybe a brief discussion on some of the thoughts on the live action may pop up, but I
Yeah.
don't
Let's
know.
focus on
Just
the original, the animated one.
the quality version of. Beauty and the Beast,
It's a
which
singular
was,
classic.
yes, most of the Disney classics are just that, classics,
Hmm.
and live action reboots. I'll be nice and not go down that road and give my thoughts on that subject just yet. But
Yeah, save that
um,
for another
Beauty
day.
Beauty and the Beast, released on November 22nd, 1991, was directed by Gary Trousdale and Kirk Wise. Obviously, was released by Disney. Had a $25 million budget, made $424 million at the box office. And for those of you math geniuses out there who love to deal in facts and figures, if you factor in inflation from 1991 until now, that 424 million is approximately 960 million dollars today. So almost a full $1 billion that movie made at the box office by today's standards. Um, Obviously, if you haven't seen it and want to see it, I pretty much sure almost everybody in the world has seen this movie. But if you haven't, it is available to stream on the Disney Plus app. And
Your local library has it in DVD. If you're
I
into
would
that.
prove if you still have the equipment for a DVD. I know some people are starting to get rid of those in favor of streaming services,
Yeah, a lot of
but
people have, but I like to point that out because libraries are still there saying, "Guys, we
oh,
still have stuff."
all we here at An Evening at the Movies also, I will say, literature reapers as well, because myself and Amanda and Shanna host that podcast as well.
That's
But
books.
that is books,
Yeah, I like
and we
books.
fully always will support local libraries because they are a dying breed. I can't speak for other places in the country, like back east, the Midwest, but I know bookstores are very much gone here.
Hmm.
Sometimes you have to drive a substantial distance to find a bookstore, let alone a wealth of bookstores.
Hmm.
Libraries, you walk in the door at a library now and it's all computers and tablets and things all electronically. And it's like we've gone, those little rectangular things filled with little pieces of paper have
Hmm.
all but basically disappeared. And I don't want to see those things disappear. I like books.
No, they're not
Books.
disappearing, Casey. Casey, I hear a lot of dark foreboding, and maybe this is a nice segue back to our topic, which was Beauty and the Beast. um, because our protagonist Belle is a book lover, and it's one of the reasons why I love the movie, because our hero is a sweet, bookish girl. Yes, she's beautiful, but she's also, as I was laughing about the other day, she's good to her dad, which is nice.
Mhm.
Maybe that appeals to me now that I'm a father, and I wish my 13-year-old was a little bit nicer. Um, but it's such a fabulous story. It's fanciful. The animation kind of blew everyone away. It was the first time I think they had quite a bit of the computer animated stuff mixed in with the old school drawings.
Yeah.
And I just love the creativity of, I mean, to me the apex is the Be Our Guest scene, where you have all of it's a little bit trippy psychedelic at a few moments, and there's some visual references, I think, to Fantasia, like with the various dancing objects. You can kind of see that, but there's also like references to Broadway, and like there's a kick line, of course, because you have to have a kick line, and it just happens to be Forks, which is freaking amazing. I also love the joy of the ensemble cast. Like I was looking at the Wikipedia entry earlier, and like there's some heavy hitters, including Angela Lansbury and Jerry Orbach.
Yeah. Definitely.
I didn't realize he was in there.
I didn't either
Yeah,
because I believe he played, um, yeah,
remember the staff, I think.
the candelabra.
Oh, Lumiere. So he was
Yeah.
doing like a put on French fancy voice. That's a funny bit because
Hmm.
normally when he does straight, it's like a New York tough guy. Anyway,
No,
um,
well, yeah, because I think a lot of people would remember him as even if it's not like from the Law and Order aspect of his career, but he also played Baby's father in Dirty Dancing.
that's right. And when he was even younger, he was among the first generations who was in the Fantastics on Broadway. So had his start in
Yes.
musical theater before he was a TV star.
So
Uh, so many
100%
great
incredibly
actors.
talented actor.
Oh my God. And I think the
And
last
even
thing,
Angela Lansbury on top of it.
yeah, who when
I
she was
mean, Murder.
when,
She was on Murder She Wrote for how many years?
for Forever and a Day, but a lot of people who know her only as the old lady with the murder stuff, they may not realize she was a huge Broadway star. She was in the original production of Sweeney Todd across Len Carew
Yes.
as Mrs. Lovett, and there are a few others that I who escape me at the moment. But she was a big time stage actress before crossing over to TV so successfully. So
I
anyway, lots of
seem to
amazing
remember
talent.
her a lot, and yeah, I seem to remember her a lot from like some of the old school classic live action Disney movies when I was a kid too. Bed Knobs and Broomsticks,
Oh,
movies of that nature. So
so
there's
I
that
need
as
to go further back in the
incredibly
Disney
talented.
catalog. Yeah, I'm inspired to do that. I
It's
should
all
plug.
available for $9.99 a month on the Disney Plus app.
No, so Kasey, yes, and I'm thinking about that because I recently appeared on our mutual friend DeAndre's show. I did Mass Debaters,
Hmm.
and we did movie musicals, and the winner was Beauty and the Beast, which is why I selected it to talk about tonight because I've been thinking about it a
Hmm.
lot. Um, and I think we are a similar age. Maybe I'm a little older than him, but we both remembered Beauty and the Beast as a classic movie of our youth. Um, I know I watched it, I believe, in the theater. I was blown away, and then would borrow it from the library. And I remember other friends had the DVD or the VC, first the VCR tape and then the DVD when everyone bought a new set
Yeah,
of everything. And then as a grown person now, as a playwright and songwriter myself, I'm a big fan of musical theater as a musical genre. Like I listen to Broadway cast albums all the time. So when I listen
mhm.
to the songs of a movie musical like Beauty and the Beast, I now listen to it with like a different attention to like lyrics and melody and orchestration, that kind of stuff, the technical aspects, as well as the pure joy. So
That was one of my
it's
favorite
so
things
good.
growing up
It's so
was
good.
my aunt my aunt for my birthday when I was a kid used to take me to musical theater productions in Seattle all the time, and I got to see stuff like Grand Hotel, Guys and Dolls, Phantom of the Opera,
Wonder
amazing classic musical performances.
Was that the touring Broadway house in Seattle?
Yeah,
Cool. Sounds like you saw some amazing
so
stuff.
and I got to actually see some incredible talent as well on stage that I at that age never thought about. Okay, maybe they're not necessarily the most famous, but I mean, like I saw one of the stars of Guys and Dolls was uh, the next door neighbor to the Bundys on Married with Children. So
That's
I
not
saw
helping me.
him as
Sorry.
no, but I mean it. It was a show I grew up loving. So when he makes his entrance, and it's like, wow, that's um, yeah, Steve Rhodes. It's like, okay, well, it's not just some nobody schmuck, whoever coming out and do it. Actually, semi-recognizable people, you know, names coming out and performing as well. So that kind of helped gravitate me, and then you get involved, especially like with Beauty and the Beast, or not Beauty and the Beast, Phantom of the Opera. Excuse me.
Yes.
How some of the set designs and all of that is so big and grandiose and awe-inspiring, and then you have the beauty of the musical numbers and all of that, and the dancing and everything. It's like it's easy to get wrapped into that whole world and lose yourself.
Oh,
So
so incredible. And especially when you're a
definitely,
young person, to see shows that are put on with that level of production value. I mean, I kind of remember at a young age
yeah,
being blown away by the high school production, um, that I'm sure with my adult eye might look rather ticky-tack. But it blew me away because I was 10, so the scale seemed big, right? And I also remember the first time I saw Broadway. I happened, sorry, to grow up near New York City. So when we went to see the theater on a field trip, we would literally go to Broadway because that was the nearest theater district. And so I saw Les Mis at a young age, which is a
wow,
little cliche as a first show to see, but certainly it was breathtaking, even from the nosebleeds. Um, and I remember kind of thinking to myself, I want to be there. Like, I want to be on that stage. So now this little musical that could is probably my best bet to get me on stage on Broadway. I'm not likely to succeed in a cattle call because all the other guys dance and sing better than me. But I can sort of hold my own as a vocalist, but it's mostly shuffling to the left and to the right and clapping on 2 and 4 is where it begins and ends. But I digress. That I want to go back to the musical Beauty and the Beast. It was maybe part of the reason why I love it so much. It is great now, but I remember falling in love with it the first time I saw it as an 11-year-old. Because you said
hmm
1991, right? I think
yep,
so. Yeah, so I was 11.
yep,
I'm a 1980 baby. Um, so it was right about the time elementary into middle school where I was coming into my own as a singer and a theater kid. And because of Disney, movie musicals were having a moment again. They had really fallen by the wayside. If you think about all of the great movie musicals, they're mostly, I want to say, before 1970. And then, I mean, I'm sure many of your
yeah.
listeners would quibble on the exact cutoff, but there was definitely like kind of a low period where Hollywood was not putting out a lot of movie musicals for the 80s, 90s, even part of the aughts. And now we've seen a little bit of a renaissance. Many people say it began with Disney and the animated stuff, which kind of
Yeah,
kicked up interest in movie musicals again. And then we saw things
we've
like
seen Les
Hairspray,
Mis, Rent,
right? A lot of
Hairspray,
Broadway
Mamma
ones,
Mia,
Valhalla, Whatified. Yep.
um, Wicked's coming out later this year. Finally,
Yes.
that's one
And
that I've
then
been
we even
waiting to
have the
see
TV,
forever.
the live on TV thing, which I've enjoyed. Um, I
Yeah,
was saying on the
it
DeAndre
it's
podcast,
different.
it's not the same as live theater, but the thing is, um, it's if you can take music and share it with more people, I think it's objectively wonderful. If I could kind of wave a magic wand around the cultural arts world, I would have our system look more like Scandinavia and Western Europe, where they put a decent amount of government funding into the theatrical and lively arts world, so more musicians and actors can make a living, and everything can be more affordable for regular people. Unfortunately, in our country, theater is rather expensive because we give it almost no public support, and that's a shame because I would love to be able to see, like, I live near both DC and Baltimore, kind of in between. So there's an embarrassment of riches for what I could see if I had the time and the checkbook. or credit card. Uh, I wish everything was a little bit cheaper, but that said, one thing we do in our family, thanks. One thing we do in our family is we go to a lot of community theater. We go to a lot of high school and middle school theater. My kid's still in middle school, so there's that. And you know what? We find it absolutely captivating. It's different, it's not the same level, of course, but we have so much fun whenever we see the local theater, and that's a good way to keep it budget. So, bringing us back to Beauty and the Beast, when I talk to my students in my music class and I'm teaching them about musicals, the easiest reference point for them to understand it's through movie musicals. And what's the one that they've all known? They know Beauty and the Beast, they know The Lion King, even a generation later, because all the people my age are now the parents of my students, right? So we grew up with it, and now we're sharing it with the next generation, whether streaming or DVD if you're kooky. Hello.
So just in case, back up, because my headset is stupid. But you have that cutoff back in the '70s of all the movie um, musicals we're talking about. Then you get to the late '80s, early '90s, where you have Pocahontas, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King. You know,
Little
I'm
Mermaid.
sure I'm missing some. Little Mermaid. I knew there was one I was missing,
Yeah, the
but
big three are
like,
generally considered Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, and Lion King. Those are the three that were the kings in terms of box office and
yeah.
awards.
Well, and I know Beauty and the Beast and Lion King both. I don't. We haven't discussed Little Mermaid yet on the show, but we have discussed Lion King, and I know Lion King and Beauty and the Beast obviously had huge successful box office. And
So
on
much
top of it,
money.
the yeah, and even the soundtracks on CD made
That's right.
millions and
They
millions and
sold
millions and millions of
sold
dollars.
tons
I
of
mean,
copies, but the soundtracks merch was huge. And
yeah.
another thing that was really big about these, um, this particular group is Disney found like a sort of new category because it had been shoehorned into kids and like young kids only movies. And the nice thing about musicals is I feel like you have a bigger window of an audience, right? Like we know
Mhm.
that, I don't know, like when it hit, Frozen certainly was a little girl thing, but we also know that a lot of big sisters and big brothers loved it too. And like, because you can watch these films at a lot of different levels. Like returning to the one at hand, Beauty and the Beast, that there's so much funny satire. Like clearly the um Ashman and Menken, who co-wrote it, they love musicals, and they have all these little Easter eggs for people who love classic musicals, like the opening number with Belle and the townsfolk. It's sort of a friendly send up of many opening numbers. It's very much of a type. The mob scene is at once musically very dark, but it's also like
Mm.
hilarious if that kind of thing is funny too. And all the visual stuff to me is endlessly entertaining. Like you can never see it all because it's so fast, especially the big numbers um, with all of the dancing flatware and whatnot. To me, it's just so creative and whimsical. With Lion King, they famously worked, drawing real lions. But how do you can't draw real dancing plates. You got to imagine it. So that to me is quite wonderful. Oh, a Facebook user says, I love musicals. Well, I love Facebook users.
So
Thanks for tuning in.
I do love Facebook um, users, and um, I will be clicking over to the link and seeing if I can decipher who this particular Facebook user is, because I would like to be able to
Multitasking.
welcome them to watching the show and discussing, having them feel free to comment on wrong page um, with us. Show and discussing, having them feel free to comment. Okay, so they're not on that page, but so was there anything in particular about the movie that you did not care for?
Great question. So
Users
I am brave in real
Aha!
life. You figured out who it is.
I did figure out who it is, and she chimed in as well. It is one of our esteemed guests as well, the senator from the great state of Bastardom, one of the members of the podcast Bracket Bastards. Bubbles is here with us watching, so
What's up, Bubbles? I
please
don't
feel
know
free
you,
to comment.
but I feel like I do.
Bubbles is great. She will here in a few weeks be making her debut as well on An Evening at the Movies, and we'll be discussing uh, Deadpool as part of our month-long look at superhero movies.
Hey,
So,
listen, Bubbles.
or
Disregard everything you've heard about this podcast. They're really nice. The popcorn's not as stale as advertised, though. I'm disappointed about that. I wanted more stale popcorn. Um, I'm gonna take the famous joke and tweak it for popcorn. This popcorn is cold. It's stale. There's not enough salt and such small portions. Thank you.
so, funny story alert. About a year ago, one of the members of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network made a personal request, and he referenced that he was tired of us always advertising the podcast where we eat the stale popcorn and drink the watered down sodas. So he made a personal request, not for a movie, but he wanted us to do an episode where, while we record, we eat stale popcorn and we drank watered down sodas for the whole episode. So for Harvey, yes, we did eat stale popcorn, and yes, we did drink watered down sodas as well. So
Hmm.
Harvey got what Harvey wanted, at least for that moment. So, but anyway, I'll let you get back
Well, I
on
love
track. For
popcorn.
you were Popcorn is amazing, and popcorn is one of the main reasons why I still go to the movies. Besides the fact that I love the
It's part of
movies,
the
but
experience. Just
it is
just
part of the
plan
experience.
ahead. Budget for the
Exactly.
experience. Don't be
Well, you
mad.
have to budget for it now, because if you have even just yourself and a date, you're looking at a $20 to $30 bill just to get in the door and get a bucket of
Yes.
popcorn. So
Yes. But what I guess what I'm saying, this is maybe the chaplain slash teacher in me. Know what to expect. Practice acceptance. If you're
yes,
getting ready to die, it's good to be ready for it. Did I just liken cinema visits to death? Maybe. If you're getting ready to go to the movies and you're ready to pay some money, then you won't get upset. You miss eating popcorn bubbles. Yeah.
I mean, I I'll say that I can see where she's coming from from that statement as well because we during COVID lost our local movie theater, and
Oh,
to me,
lost but not forgotten. That's a shame.
oh no, it's not forgotten at all because it's literally sitting in a mall that's been condemned, and we can't use it because it's not safe to be inside the mall.
Uh,
So, but Bubble says I used to go to the local theater and just get concession popcorn. I mean, that was exactly you read my mind, Senator. But that was going to be my point, though. Was there's definitely something different between movie theater popcorn and just pop it yourself at home popcorn, like Pop Weaver or whatever. We're not being sponsored by any of them, but if they feel like they want to sponsor a movie podcast, feel free to get in touch with me, and I will gladly accept that sponsorship. But so
I
yeah,
think it's good to put
losing a
that
movie,
out there.
you don't know who, like you said with the message in a bottle thing a little while ago. You don't know who's out there. Somebody could be listening, and it could be somebody at the Orville Redenbacher corporate office, and it could be, hey, I like what they're talking about. I think I want to invest some money in this show, and they could message me and say, hey, we'll give you $5,000 a week to do your podcast as well as advertise our popcorn only on your show. It's the senator's job to anticipate the thoughts of my loyal subjects. Exactly. Great minds think alike, Senator. So,
Wonderful.
but before the whole um, bubbles coming in popped up, we were getting ready to discuss if there was anything about the movie that you didn't particularly care for.
Oh, yeah, I'll get to the chase. So I I'm brave in real life, but I'm scared in movies. I don't like horror movies. I don't even like crime thrillers that much because they kind of creep me out. Um, I'm rather brave in real life. I sing in front of people, hospice chaplain. I go snowboarding. I bicycle in New York City. Um, but give me a scary movie scene, and I get it kind of creeped out. So as an 11-year-old, I remember the climactic fight scene when the beast is kind of depressed and he doesn't even put up a fight as the villain is attacking him.
Uh,
And then he sees Belle and he starts fighting back. And I just remember kind of white knuckling through it. And to this day, even though I know that he's going to survive and magically turn back into like the hunky human guy, the prince, no claws, all handsome. Yeah, before that happens, it's still like an emotional roller coaster. As you know what's gonna happen. You know it turns out okay. It's a kids movie.
mm.
But that sequence is very
Well,
dramatic and
it's
still a
Disney
little bit
too. Disney
scary.
very rarely has an unhappy ending at the end of the movie.
That's
They'll give
right.
you
But
tears in
they
the beginning of the
always give
movie,
you
but
that's right. Yes.
they
They
make up
set
for
the
the
table.
tears at the beginning of the movie when Mufasa dies with Simba and Nala having a baby and their daughter
That's
becoming
right.
the Lion Queen.
That's
Spoiler
right.
alert.
That's right. Nice. Yeah. It's true. It's true. But we also at the same time we laugh about uh that things turn out well in most of these Disney movies. Yeah, there's a lot of heartache in the preamble. Like we don't know where is Belle's mom, but she apparently lives alone with her father. Maybe if I listened closely for another watching, I might get a clue about that. I wonder if there's a reference to that. Any
I've seen the
commenters
movie enough,
watching?
and I don't think that subject ever popped up.
So
Um,
who knows?
Senator
But
Bubbles, have you seen the movie enough to know if there's a backstory for Belle's mom?
yeah, but there's something is, and whether or not the mom issue is as much of a big deal as I'm making it out to be, there is a theme of wanting to be somewhere else. I was listening to the soundtrack before I got ready, and her beautiful I wish song, it's kind of tucked into the opening number in a unusual way. But she's singing, there must be more than this provincial life. And she wants adventure. She wants to be in the same kind of fairy tales like in the books that she likes to read. And she tells the bookseller, who apparently just operates a lending library. I don't know how he pays the rent, because he doesn't charge her for books. Maybe because she's nice and pretty, or at least nice. But he's always loaning her the books, and she says, I like the one where there's an adventure and they go to palaces, and like it's clear that she's a dreamer, right? And she talks about being
Mhm.
stuck in this town. So to me, that's one of the most relatable aspects of the film that is otherwise very fanciful and very dated. Like it does feel like an old-timey town. There's horse-drawn everything, and the inventor is making a machine that I believe runs on steam power, very steampunk wood chopping
Yeah.
thing. So it's of a time, and there is a castle in the way that these kinds of things do. But I feel like it's a very contemporary feeling or timeless feeling to be a young person who reads exciting books and feels like every story you read is a more exciting story than the one you're living in real life.
Well, I can remember. I can relate to that a lot, for especially during my youth, where uh, I had an aunt who owned a used bookstore, so there was never a shortage for me to have a book in my hand
Nice.
whenever I needed one, and it didn't matter whether it was Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, you know, whatever. Um, I probably was introduced to characters from the literary world that probably were a little bit more advanced than I should be. I mean, I read my first Sherlock Holmes short story when I was like fourth grade, third grade, fourth grade. So, but definitely the fact books are definitely a fantastical escape for people who may or even may not be not happy with their everyday life. You can pick up a book and escape into that world no matter what you're reading, whether it's a all-time classic, Robinson Crusoe,
Hmm.
Swiss Family Robinson, or whatever, or whether it's, the latest Stephen King, or John Grisham, or whatever the case may be. You get to escape into that world, and even for if it's only for a couple hours, you can disappear from the normal everyday drug of your life. So that, well, uh, I think we covered just about every discussion question I had written down. Was there anything that you feel like we missed that you wanted to make sure we covered before we got to our review portion of the show?
Yeah. Hmm. You know, I, I'll say it was kind of a trailblazer in a lot of ways. I mean, we mentioned it earlier, Kasey, as part of this trio of big movies, along with Little Mermaid and Lion King, that made Disney a ton of money. But I also think they heralded the beginning of a huge moment for what is now a entertainment juggernaut for Disney Corporation, which is the Disney Broadway division, right? So Beauty and the Beast was the
Yeah,
first of their animated properties to become a Broadway musical, and it ran for many, many years. Did well at the Tonys.
which gave way for Yeah, and it gave
And
way
it led
for
to Lion King, which
the
was
development
now
of the Lion
become
King,
the biggest of all.
one of the
Um,
top grossing Broadway musicals of all
I
time.
believe, yeah, we'd have to check on that, but if it's not number one already, it will be soon. Um, I looked the last
Yes.
time I was in New York City, the nosebleed seats for Lion King are all $200 plus. That's crazy to me. The cheapest seats for like a Wednesday night. So it's just so popular
Hmm.
to this day that they can literally charge more than any other show on Broadway. And they haven't changed it in, is it now 10, more than 10 years on Broadway? It's kind of amazing. And I think so
Yeah.
much of that has to do with the visuals of it. That's a different conversation for a different podcast, I'm sure. But it kind of all began, you know, Disney has been making movie musicals of a type for different years, but there was something about how big Beauty and the Beast hit in 1991 that I think kind of made everyone take another look at what musical theater could be in different kinds of ways. So yes, animated, yes, take animated films and turn them into Broadway, which is now a thing that is done left and right. Yeah, and then now, as you mentioned in the beginning, we'll take our animated movie musicals, and then redo them as live action movie musicals, as is the case with Beauty and the Beast and
Hmm.
Aladdin and Lion King and more. Um, and so, and
Moana, blah 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 blah, so on
oh,
and
they're going
so
to keep
forth. I
doing
mean,
it. It's amazing. Whether you love it or not, as a music teacher, I say it's great because more kids are and families are given a chance to experience this wonderful music. Um,
mhm,
reference previous comment about theater being occasionally expensive or hard to access. Um, I know that for a fact, more Americans know about musicals through the animated films of the Disney Corporation than any amount of
yeah,
Broadway shows, just based on eyeballs. And so I think about this film and I can't help but smile because it's filled with these moments of splendid joy and a little bit of heartbreak and heartache and the requisite wonderful ending with hope and rebirth. So what could be better than that? Answer: nothing. Nothing could be better. Mic drop.
I would 100% agree with that. Exactly. So I think on that note, that actually probably is almost the perfect segue into. So if you were to sit down and give this movie a rating on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being and 5 being incredibly awesome and amazing, what would you rate this movie on that scale?
Oh man, I'm on the fence between like 4.5 and 5. Um, I really, I struggled when you asked me about my least favorite part of the movie. I talked a little bit about when it got scary. I didn't like that, but I think that's an important part of the story. Um,
It
I don't
really
know.
is. I mean, it helps create that dark, scary aspect of the story so that at the end of the day, you know, you can achieve that ultimate happy ride off into the sunset moment as they, I guess, for lack of a better term, live happily ever after.
They do. They do. And even the servants are happy. The domestic team gets
So
turned back
there's
from objects to people.
there can be no sunrise at the start of the day unless you go through a period of complete darkness.
That's right. After the darkness comes the light. That's a
I
big theme
guess
in my show.
kind of sort of a weak metaphor, but
No,
the sun
it's
has
not a
to
weak metaphor. It's a timeless metaphor. And it has to
well,
be an
because at the end
accessible
of the
image
day,
to become a metaphor and well
you
known.
know, at the end of the day, you work in the hospice, and
Mm-hmm.
that can be, you know, the metaphorical sunset of one person's life,
That's right.
and can also be a transition into a dark time for the plus one or family around said person. But then at the end of the day, hopefully things always end up getting better. So, so yeah, for me, I would probably go ahead and go 4.5 out of 5, just because it really has to work their butt off to earn a 5 out of 5 for me. And
Same.
I'm one of those people that believes there's no such thing as being perfect. I've seen and talked about a few movies that I would consider as close to perfection as there could be. Um, and maybe out of nostalgia purposes, they may have gotten a higher score than 4.5. But
Have you ever
four and a
given a
half out of
five
five is a great
star?
score.
Kasey, have you ever given a 5 star on your show? Yeah. What's
I'm
a
not gonna.
movie or two that comes to mind that's a 5 star for you?
Amanda and I, especially in the early days of the show, we gave out 5 out of 5 like there was no tomorrow. Stand by Me got a 5 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Princess Bride did not get a 5 out of 5, which kind of sort of started our whole process of re-examining, you know, the whole aspect of our rating system.
Hmm.
But
Like a great inflation scandal. It sounds like you gave away too many of the top scores, but then you didn't give the score to the one that you felt deserve it. Am I understanding right?
yeah, yeah,
The
and
Princess Bride's pretty awesome. So, what's the matter with you people? Come on.
it is pretty awesome. Stand by Me is an awesome movie as well, but
Yeah.
at the same time, there are movies out there that, for me, might be very high scores like that, but at the end of the day, they're really not. If you stop and look at it from a objective point of view. So,
Hmm.
um, but Stand by Me was one of those that really jumped out at me though as a movie that we both thought deserved a 5 out of 5. It was very much a part of our growing up experience in the mid 80s.
Hmm.
So we enjoyed it. So we kind of sort of went over the top on that. But um, definitely 100%. This is 4 out of 5. Absolutely. So as far as the topic that we brought up a little while ago about the question mark over what happened to Belle's mom, I did happen to ask everybody's favorite Caribbean Queen co-host, Amanda, and she believes very briefly in the movie it's brought up that she thinks that her mom died.
I mean, Disney always goes there. It is our
Oh,
essential
I mean,
fear as
Mufasa
people.
dies.
The
Well, I
parents of the
mean, at the end of the
Frozen
day,
kids
nobody.
die.
Yeah, bad joke time, but they definitely let it go.
Hmm. The cold
Not a
never
funny
bothered
joke,
me
but I
anyway.
digress. But I digress. So yeah, I think that just about covers the whole subject.
I feel like I gotta go eat
I
some
can't
dinner and
wrap
then
up.
maybe watch Beauty and the Beast. I mean, if not
Yeah,
tonight, I definitely need to this weekend because I've now spoken about it at length on 2 different podcasts in the last 3 weeks. And I need to give a shout out to DeAndre and can you put that in the link? Because I did the bracket. I don't want to ruin it for the people, but I kind of did already. I may or may not have chosen Beauty and the Beast. We'll see. You'll have to listen to see if I did or not. But we had a
I will
good conversation.
definitely search out the link for that episode, and when I'm posting all the other um, links for all of Ben's stuff, I will provide the link for that Masturbators episode as well.
It was
And if I
fun.
can't find it on wherever, I'll just get a hold of Dre and have Dre send it to me because
You know him.
I am connected to the king of the Masturbators.
Yeah.
We're kind of sort of, in a podcast network together. So,
That's
but
outstanding.
definitely thank you to the listeners for being here each and every week. You guys are incredible.
Thanks,
You guys are the
guys. I'm
reason
glad to be
why
here.
we are 3 years in. And as well, the reason why we're here 3 years running, 200 episodes in. Definitely 100%. Thank you, Ben, for being here. And thank you for picking this movie. It's been a while since we've done anything Disney on the show, and it needed to be brought up and done. So I think the last thing we discussed that was technically Disney was um, Toy Story almost 2 years ago. And is that really Disney or is that more Pixar?
Toy Story
A
is
discussion
Pixar.
for another time.
But regardless,
But Disney owns the
animated,
rights because
delightful.
Disney owns all Disney
owns a
owns all
lot
of
of
Hollywood
stuff.
anyway. So, um, but like I said, thank you, Ben, for being here. I will
Thanks for
provide
having
each
me,
and every one of
Kasey.
the links anytime. You are welcome to come back whenever you want. We can discuss more. We can discuss Disney. We can discuss anything you want to discuss because we are open and willing for any kind of topic on an evening at the movies. So definitely, if
You
you're
know what? Have
interested
you ever discussed
in
Karate
musical
Kid?
theater, we have. But you know what? I'm willing to revisit it because it's one of my favorite movies. And on top of that, it came out in 1984, which, spoiler alert, we are looking at movies that came out in 1984 all summer long this year. So
Hmm.
that could
So I
definitely
would do
find its way
Karate
back
Kid with you.
onto.
I would do Karate Kid with you. That's one of my all-time favorites.
Well,
The other one that
it would
comes to
be all
mind,
three of us because
that's a
Amanda
group show.
is. Well, yeah, I mean, I can't do Karate Kid without having Amanda on. Amanda kicked my butt at Karate Kid trivia, pun intended.
Nice.
She crane kicked me to the face on Karate Kid
Oh,
trivia.
there is no mercy in this
So
podcast.
yes, Ben say.
Well done. Well
Um,
done. The other one,
not
I
just a
wonder,
hat
have you
rack.
ever done have you ever done Dazed and Confused?
Not yet.
Ah,
But
so
if
that
you
is
would
a
like to
cult
do it, I
classic.
will put it on.
Yeah, that was my
We will get it on the schedule.
that was my favorite movie from college. I had this habit, like so many college kids, of partying a little too much. And I learned that if I went to sleep when I was still really drunk, I would often face terrible consequences. So instead, I would watch a movie to
Mm.
sober up. I picked one movie. It was called Dazed and Confused. And I watched it so many times my freshman year as I sobered up night after night after some enthusiastic partying. So by the end of my freshman year, um, let's say medium successful as an academic, but boy, did I know that movie well. So that was the time that I fell in love with it, and then I visited it now and again ever since. Um, so yeah, let's talk about Dazed and Confused and maybe Karate Kid, two more favorite movies. Thanks for the opportunity to
I
come
will
on,
find.
Kasey. I enjoyed it.
I enjoyed having you on, and again, we look forward to you coming back as well. And as always, again, the listeners are the reason why we do these episodes each and every week. Sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, depending upon how motivated I feel. So, yes, thank you guys all for being here, and we hope you guys all come back for an evening at the movies. Have a good week, guys.
Bye, everyone.